It shows I'm trusted with higher-level work. What higher-level work? Strategic inventory management. You'll have more autonomy, more decision-making authority. I counted inventory. That's what I did. That's what I'd been doing. That's what I would keep doing. Nothing about the job description hinted at anything strategic or independent. I organized boxes and verified numbers. Important work, but not managerial. Can I stay hourly? I asked. Her smile tightened. Lorian, I'm offering you growth here. Don't you want to move up in your career? The way she said it made me feel like I'd suggested something absurd, like setting the warehouse on fire instead of counting inventory. I felt my face heat up. I'll think about it. I felt my face heat up. You have until Friday, she said. I need to finalize the paperwork. That night, I sat at my kitchen table for 3 hours trying to figure out if I was being ungrateful or smart. My apartment was small, 1 bedroom, a 15-minute drive from work. I'd lived there 4 years and never once been late on rent. The extra $4,000 a year would be nice, but losing overtime would cost more than I'd gain. Still, Cecile's words kept spinning in my head. Career growth, advancement, trust. On Friday, I accepted the promotion. The first month I worked 43 hours. Not bad. The second month, 48. The third month, Cecile started scheduling weekend inventory counts. Mandatory. She'd send a message Friday afternoon saying we needed everyone in Saturday morning because a big shipment was coming Monday and we had to verify space availability. 6 hours on Saturday, no extra pay. You're salaried now, she said when I asked about compensation. This is part of the job. The fourth month, I worked 61 hours in 1 week. 61. I began tracking everything in a notebook I kept at home. Date, hours worked, tasks completed. I wrote down every conversation where Cecile implied I might lose my promotion if I didn't show up for weekend counts. Every time she mentioned how others would love to have my position. Every time she reminded me how much she valued my dedication. I noticed something else during those months. 7 other people in our department had received the same promotion I did. All of us moved from hourly to salaried. All of us working 50 to 60-hour weeks now without overtime pay. I started talking to them during breaks, quiet chats in the parking lot. Everyone shared the same concerns. Everyone felt trapped the same way. Nobody wanted to complain and risk losing their job. Then one day, someone from accounting mentioned that Cecile had received a massive bonus at the end of the fiscal year. Department costs had dropped 38% under her management. 38%. I went home and did more math. If 7 people who used to earn overtime were now working the same hours for straight salary, that was tens of thousands in saved labor costs. Money that didn't go to us, money that went straight to the bottom line, money that made Cecile look like a genius who knew how to run an efficient operation. That's when I realized this wasn't about promoting us. This was about reclassifying us to dodge paying overtime. This was wage theft with a fancy title attached. I spent 3 days reading the Fair Labor Standards Act, the exemption rules, the duties test. To be legally classified as exempt from overtime, you must meet specific criteria. Your primary duty has to involve management, or you must exercise discretion and independent judgment about significant business matters. I did none of that. I counted boxes. I checked shipments. I organized inventory. My work was important, but it wasn't exempt work. I scheduled a meeting with HR. The director's name was Paola, 50-something, at the company for 20 years. Her office smelled like vanilla air freshener and old paper. I explained the situation politely, carefully. I didn't accuse anyone. I just said I thought there might be a classification error. We'll look into it, Paula said. She jotted something down in a notepad. Our legal team reviews all position classifications. I'm sure everything is in order, but I'll double-check. 2 weeks later, nothing had changed. I was still working 50-hour weeks, still getting the same salary. I scheduled another meeting. This time I brought documentation, printouts of the FLSA guidelines, a list of my daily duties, examples of timesheets showing consistent 50-plus hour weeks. Our lawyers have reviewed all our positions. PA said, "You're correctly classified. The duties you perform qualify for exemption." I count inventory. I said I don't manage anyone. I don't make business decisions. You exercise judgment in your role. You make determinations about inventory allocation. I follow the system. The computer tells me where products go based on existing orders. I just verify the numbers and organize the logistics. That requires professional judgment. She said it like reading from a script, like someone told her exactly what to say if anyone questioned the classifications. I left her office feeling smaller than when I entered. 6 weeks later, I went back a third time. This time, I wasn't polite. I wasn't careful. I was exhausted. Cecile had scheduled 3 weekend inventory counts in 1 month. I'd worked 54 hours, then 57, then 62. My body ached. My apartment was a mess because I was never home long enough to clean it. I stopped seeing friends because I was always working, or too exhausted to go anywhere. I'm working 60-hour weeks for the same pay I made 3 years ago. I said, "This isn't legal. I know it isn't legal. I've read the regulations. I've documented everything. Something has to change." Paula didn't jot anything down this time. She just stared at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Tired, maybe, or annoyed. "It's not a priority right now," she said. I walked out of her office, got in my car, and sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes. I wasn't crying. I wanted to, but I was too angry. The kind of anger that sits in your chest and makes it hard to breathe. The kind that makes you understand why people do things they never thought they would. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. I pulled up the State Labor Board website. I'd looked at it before, but never seriously considered filing a complaint. That felt too big, too confrontational, like dropping a bomb instead of having a conversation. But 3 conversations hadn't worked. 3 meetings, 3 attempts to solve the problem through proper channels, all of them dismissed. The complaint form was long, detailed. It asked for everything: employee information, employer information, description of the violation, supporting documentation. I filled it out slowly, carefully, making sure every detail was accurate. I listed every hour I'd worked in the past 8 months. I attached my job description. I explained exactly what tasks I performed daily. I included the names of the 7 other employees who'd been reclassified the same way I had. Then I added something else, something I'd realized during my weeks of research. I explained that my manager's bonus structure was directly tied to department cost reduction, that she had a financial incentive to misclassify employees, that her 38% cost savings came from unpaid labor, not efficiency improvements. I submitted the complaint at 2 a.m. Then I closed my laptop and went to bed. I didn't sleep. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd just made everything better or destroyed my entire career. 4 days passed, 4 days where I showed up to work and counted inventory like nothing had changed. Like I hadn't just filed a formal complaint with the state that could blow everything up. I kept waiting for something to happen. A phone call, an email, some kind of acknowledgement that my complaint had been received. Nothing came. I started wondering if I'd done it wrong, if maybe the form hadn't actually submitted, if maybe no one was ever going to look at it. Then Thursday afternoon, Cecile's assistant came running through the warehouse. Actually running, she never ran. She was always composed, always moving at exactly the right pace to look busy, but not frantic. But this time, she was sprinting, her shoes making loud claps against the concrete floor. "Where's Paula?" she shouted to anyone who would listen. "The state is here. They're in the building. They want payroll records for the entire department." I was holding my clipboard, counting a shipment of industrial supplies that had arrived that morning, 247 units. I wrote down the numbers slowly, carefully, like my hand wasn't shaking, like my heart wasn't trying to punch through my ribs. The labor board doesn't call ahead. I'd learned that from my research. They don't schedule appointments or give companies time to prepare. They just show up with legal authority and start auditing. It's the only way to get accurate information. If you tell a company you're coming, they have time to fix things, hide things, reclassify people back to hourly for a few weeks, then switch them again after the inspection. I kept counting. 248, 249. People were moving differently around me, faster, more urgent. Someone from management walked past, talking quickly into their phone. Another person I'd never seen before was escorting two official-looking individuals toward the administrative offices. They carried folders and briefcases and had the kind of expressions that meant they weren't here to be friendly. I finished counting the shipment, verified the manifest, signed off on. The delivery. Just another Thursday, just another ordinary task. An hour later, footsteps approached my workstation. Two people I knew before. I turned around to see who it would be. Pa stood there with someone else from HR I'd seen before, but never spoken to. Both of them looked like they'd aged several years in the past 60 minutes. Pa's face had lost all its color. The vanilla air freshener smell was gone. Now she just smelled like stress. "Why didn't you tell us you'd contacted the labor board?" Her voice came out strange, higher than usual. Tight. I set down my clipboard. "I did tell you 3 times. You didn't say you were going to file a formal complaint with the state. You said my concerns weren't a priority. I made them a priority." The other HR person stepped forward. "This is a major issue, Lorian. We could have handled this internally. Now we have state investigators requesting documentation for everyone in your department and 3 other departments. Do you understand what kind of position this puts the company in? Do you understand what kind of position you put me in?" I kept my voice even, calm. I'd worked 60-hour weeks for 8 months without proper compensation. I reported it through the proper internal channels 3 separate times. Nothing changed. What was I supposed to do? Pa's jaw moved like she was chewing something bitter. "We're going to need you to cooperate fully with the investigation." "Of course," I said. "I've already documented everything they'll need." They walked away without another word. I watched them go, watched them disappear back into the administrative wing, where the state investigators were probably asking very uncomfortable questions about payroll practices, classification standards, and bonus structures tied to cost reduction. I picked up my clipboard and moved to the next shipment, 312 units of packaging materials. I counted every single one. The investigation lasted 6 weeks. 6 weeks where the entire warehouse felt like someone had muted everything. People spoke quieter, moved more cautiously. Cecile stopped doing her morning walks through the facility. She stayed in her office with the door shut. Sometimes I'd see her through the window, sitting at her desk, staring at something I couldn't see. Investigators came back twice more. They interviewed staff, pulled time records, requested emails, memos, and documentation about position classifications. I was interviewed once for 45 minutes. They asked about my daily tasks, my work hours, whether anyone had ever explicitly told me I couldn't have overtime anymore, whether I'd raised concerns internally before filing the complaint. I told them everything, showed them my notebook with 8 months of detailed time tracking, gave them the dates of my 3 meetings with HR, and explained how 7 other people in my department had been reclassified the same way. "Did you notice any pattern to these reclassifications?" one investigator asked. She was maybe 50 years old with gray hair, cut short, and eyes that looked like they'd heard every excuse in the world. "They all happened within a 6-month period after our new manager started," I said. "And they all reduced department overtime costs significantly." "Did your manager receive any bonuses or compensation tied to department performance?" "Yes. She got a large bonus at year-end. People in accounting talked about it. Department costs had dropped by 38%. The investigator wrote something down. Thank you. This is helpful. Weeks went by. I kept working, kept counting. The warehouse felt suspended in something heavy and tense. Then one morning, 6 weeks and 2 days after the state investigators first arrived, an email went out to everyone in my department. Meeting in the break room at 2 p.m., attendance mandatory. We gathered at the scheduled time. All 10 of us who'd been reclassified, plus several people from other departments I didn't know. Management was there. HR was there. Someone from the legal team was there, wearing an expression that looked like physical pain. The legal person stood up first. The State Labor Board has completed their investigation into classification practices. They've determined that certain positions were incorrectly classified as exempt from overtime. This affected multiple employees across several departments. My heart was pounding so hard I worried everyone could hear it. The company is required to pay back wages for all unpaid overtime worked during the period of misclassification. We're also implementing immediate corrective measures to ensure proper classification going forward. She sat down. Pa stood up. You'll each receive individual notifications about your back pay calculations. The company takes these findings seriously. We're committed to compliance with all labor regulations. Nobody asked questions. Nobody said a word. We all just sat there absorbing what that meant. Back pay. They had to pay us what they'd stolen. The meeting ended. People filed out slowly, quietly. I went back to my workstation and tried to focus on inventory counts, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. 2 days later, an envelope appeared on my desk. Inside was a letter with numbers, calculations, hours worked, overtime owed. The total made my vision blur for a second. $18,400. That's what they'd stolen from me over 8 months. That's what they owed me now. But that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part came 3 days later. Cecile was gone. Just gone. Her office empty. Her nameplate removed. Someone mentioned she'd been terminated. Someone else said it was more than termination. The company was demanding she return bonuses. I didn't understand at first. Then someone from accounting explained it to me in the parking lot, speaking quietly like it was classified information. The state investigator had noted something specific in their report. They documented that Cecile's bonus structure was directly tied to department cost savings, achieved through misclassifications. The bonuses weren't just rewards for good management. They were financial gains obtained through illegal labor practices. The company's legal team, trying to protect themselves from liability, had determined that those bonuses could be considered personal enrichment through wage theft. They'd calculated 3 years of bonuses, $127,000. They wanted it back, all of it. Cecile didn't have it. She'd bought a house 2 years ago, a nice house in a good neighborhood, made a down payment that drained most of her savings. She'd been counting on those annual bonuses continuing. She'd built her life around income that came from stolen wages. Now the company wanted their money back. The money they'd given her for stealing from us, and she had to pay it. There were lawyers involved, payment plans, arrangements that would take years to complete. I heard all this firsthand through workplace gossip that moved faster than any shipment I'd ever organized. I didn't know if all the details were precise, but the core truth was undeniable. Cecile was gone. Her bonuses were being reclaimed. She was paying back money she'd already spent. The back paychecks arrived the following week, $18,400. I deposited it the same day. Stood at the bank watching the teller process the check, watching the numbers appear in my account balance. Money I'd already earned months ago. Money that should have been mine all along. Management brought in someone new to replace Cecile. Her name was Tomasa, late 40s, calm demeanor. First thing she did was call a department meeting. I've reviewed all your positions, she said. Effective immediately, everyone classified as exempt is being reclassified as hourly. You'll track your time. You'll be paid for every hour you work. Overtime will be compensated at the proper rate. Someone asked if we'd still keep the senior titles. You can keep the titles if you want them, Tamasa said. But titles don't matter as much as fair compensation. You do good work, you should be paid properly for it. That was it. Simple, direct, the way it should have been from the start. I went back to counting inventory, back to organizing shipments, but now, when I worked 50 hours, I got paid for 50 hours. When I worked 40, I got paid for 40. The system was simple again, honest again. Pa transferred to a different location 3 weeks later. I never saw her again. Someone said she requested the transfer. Someone else said management had suggested it. Either way, she was gone. Cecile's office stayed empty for 2 months. They eventually converted it into storage for administrative supplies. Sometimes I walk past it and glance inside. Boxes of paper, filing supplies, extra equipment, no person, no nameplate, just empty space where someone once sat calculating how much money they could save by stealing from the people who worked for them. The other 18 employees who'd been misclassified got their back pay too. Amounts varied. Some had been reclassified longer than I had. Some worked more overtime. The total the company had to pay out was $340,000. $340,000 in stolen wages they had to return, because one person finally stopped asking nicely and started demanding legally. I still work there, still count inventory, still organize shipments, still notice when numbers don't add up. My apartment is the same, my commute is the same, but something feels different now. Lighter, like I'm not carrying something heavy that didn't realize was weighing me down. People ask me sometimes if I was scared to file that complaint. If I worried about retaliation or losing my job, the answer is yes. I was terrified, but I was also tired. Tired of working 60 hours and being paid for 40. Tired of asking for basic fairness and being dismissed. Tired of watching someone profit from my unpaid labor while telling me it wasn't a priority. Sometimes making something a priority means taking it out of someone else's hands and putting it in the hands of people who actually care about fixing it. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever felt like your concerns didn't matter, like your voice wasn't being heard, I hope this shows you that sometimes the system works if you know which part of the system to use. Hit that like button if this resonated with you. Subscribe for more stories about people who refuse to stay silent, and comment below. Tell me about a time you had to fight for something you deserved. Your stories matter just as much as mine.